Hey, welcome into a Monday edition of the Husker247 Daily. I'm Michael Bruntz, Brian Christopherson over there. It is officially Penn State week. The Huskers are done with their bye, and we are now awaiting the matchup with the Nittany Lions, Nebraska's final road game of the regular season. Brian, we learned the opening point spread yesterday for this one. Obviously, a night game at Penn State in November doesn't sound particularly fun, but did some books had it at like 10.5. We saw 10 at some. It's the Vegas Insider consensus line right now is sitting at basically about 9.5. Like, does that seem right to you? Where does that opening line strike you?
It's a couple points higher than I thought. I'm not surprised that Penn State would be favored by like 7.5. And I know to some it's like, man, they're 4-6, and there's been sort of this chatter, Bruntz, I hear it at least, of like, oh, Penn State's gonna quit on this season and all that. I don't think you can buy into that based off the data. I mean, I know there was a thought maybe that their close loss to Indiana a couple weeks ago would take the final wind out of their sails. But they went on the road, and I know Michigan State's not having a good year, but they win a Big Ten road game 28-10, pulled away in the fourth quarter. They've still got, as you know, like 4-star guys scattered throughout that roster. The defensive line can be fierce. They gave Indiana heck. So I would just put it like this. Even though Penn State's 4-6, and it sounds funny to say about a 4-6 team, this to me would easily be Nebraska's best win of the year. I think, like, if at this time of season, if they can go out there at night on a 38-degree evening and beat Penn State on their grass to get to 8-3, I would put it head and shoulders above any win. And I know there's Cincinnati and all that. This one would be better to me.
Second start for TJ Lateef, upcoming. What are you expecting the conversation to be around him this week? And actually a matchup of two freshman quarterbacks that at the start of the year we probably weren't expecting. But what do you expect the offense to look like? How do you kind of handle this? Because UCLA felt like a little bit of a different animal just because he's going home. It's a UCLA team that's obviously struggled, but what do you kind of expect this week from him, and then also just kind of the conversation around him after Nebraska already played the let's rally around our quarterback card to get that UCLA win?
Yeah, you can't really go back to that one, I guess. Now he's got one under his belt, and I think it's more so just about he should have a lot of confidence after that first career start where, yes, there were the struggles when he had to come in cold against USC, but when he had a full week of preparation, it was clear that Dana Holgorsen had a very good catalog of what TJ could do really well. And I wouldn't say it was limited, but I think they kept it, the script fairly tight so that it wasn't too much to process for a young guy. He still had to make good decisions and make some changes at the line and stuff like that, and he did it really well. So I think just more of the same, honestly, Bruntz. Maybe you expand it a little bit, but you're going to rely on Emmett Johnson, I'm guessing, for 28 to 30 touches again. And you're going to require TJ probably to throw the ball about 15 times, something like that. And you just hope that he can hit, at a very efficient clip when you do have those pass plays where you get a lot of bang for your buck out of each one of them.
Did they? I mean, the fact that you have a mobile quarterback in this one versus maybe what Nebraska had with Dillon. I mean, Penn State's a little bit further down nationally in rush defense than maybe what you'd probably expect from the level of talent there. Quarterbacks have had some success running the ball against them. I mean, is it as much kind of pressure as there is on a freshman making that kind of start? It feels like there's almost a little bit of an advantage with what he brings to the table versus having to play a little bit more of a traditional offense.
Yeah, it's the ultimate advantage of a QB who's a little bit more mobile, especially I think in the college game. It's turned actually into the pro game too, like that. Rule said a couple of weeks ago how Pat Stewart was saying to him, if a young guy wants to start early in the league, he's got to be able to move usually a little bit to have that opportunity. So TJ only ran it like 5 times, though, I think, in the game against UCLA. And so some might have thought, well, that's actually kind of low. So I wouldn't be surprised if that number had a little bit of an uptick. But I think what's important is that you've put it on tape now that, hey, he's got the zone read element where he can pull it like he did on the first play against UCLA, kind of sent a message with that. Penn State knows they have to be aware of it. And that opens up things, I think, for Emmett too, a little bit. That should help him. And so I fully expect them to use TJ's legs. And honestly, where it could be the biggest benefit is, there's going to be a few plays in this game where it's just off script and it turned into a backyard play. And can TJ go run for 9 yards when you got to get 7 on a third down? I mean, that's the difference between winning and losing. And sometimes, and to have that in your holster is a nice weapon.
Where do you put these last 2 games in kind of the overall narrative of this season and the way that things have gone? I mean, just on paper, it looks like both of these teams are going to try to do things offensively that Nebraska has shown or not shown, I guess, that they're able to stop. I mean, I think stopping the run is going to be huge for Nebraska in these 2. But, I mean, what's the opportunity here with these final 2 games against Penn State and an Iowa team that's, a few plays away from having a much better season than maybe what they're having now? But what do you kind of make of this opportunity, and how do you kind of make sense of where everything falls overall in 2025?
How much has the young D-line grown? It definitely has made progress. These next 2 weeks could be huge if you sort of clamp down on the run. At least we're sturdy there, and would have people feeling pretty good with some of those young guys seemingly coming back in 2026. I did the snap counts on our site, and like 18 of the 25 highest snap getters can return to Nebraska next year. And of course, we know in this day and age that doesn't necessarily happen. But I think with Rules was sort of bullish that they could, they have the pocketbook to keep guys. You're kind of hopeful they can develop that. So that's big to me, these last 2 games, that defense, those young players, the run stoppage, is it there? And then just big picture, if you go back to August, we would do these polls sometimes on our site, on social media. 8-4 was the common fan pick. And so I think it's a huge step if this team can at least get 1 or 2. I know they want both of them. And I'd whisper this. Ideally, it's against Iowa. I think if Nebraska fans had their druthers, they'd be happy to wake up that Saturday with the win over Iowa. If you told them right now Nebraska's 8-4, but to get to that mark would be huge, I think, for this season. And people would definitely say, well, that was a step. They did make progress, and they did it with a quarterback injury to boot.
Let's finish up here. You were up in Sioux Falls for Nebraska's 105. Nebraska basketball's 105-99 win over Oklahoma. Huskers came roaring back after spotting Oklahoma an early lead. Angry crowd, is that fair to say? I always forget, and I shouldn't. Like these games, that NCAA tournament game against Texas A&M, I always underestimate the amount of venom that Nebraska basketball fans are capable of away from Pinnacle Bank Arena.
There's a lot of pent up aggression from like a century of not winning an NCAA tournament game. And I think it comes out sometimes. That was a beautiful basketball game. It was old school. It reminded me, I wrote this of like NBA playoffs when we were kids in the 90s, like the Western Conference playoff game between like the Suns and the Sonics or something, where they just keeps taking the ball to the bottom of the net. So that was fun. I loved how Nebraska just posed so many different problems for Oklahoma on the defensive end. And Porter Moser talked about it in the post game. He said Nebraska is sort of unique in the fact that they have a 5 like Rink Mast who can pick and pop like he does and is so gifted as a facilitator. But then he says they'll also post you up like they did with Berke a few times. And Berke had one of his best games of his career with 16 points. And so they kind of had these 2 elements playing off each other that at least Porter Moser would say you don't see very often, and it makes it very difficult. The crowd was on fire. It felt like an old when we were in high school kind of game where it was like 1 versus 2, like in the whole gym's packed like 2 hours beforehand. It was that kind of rowdiness in the air. One fan got kicked out for apparently throwing the ball with a little bit too much mustard back to the officials. I don't know about that. Seemed a little weak.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, 3,462 fans were still left, and they helped Nebraska win that game. No question about it. They were a 6-man.
Price Sanford's going to be a problem for teams.
I think what people saw, he scored 28, but it was like, okay, when he got here, he's a shooter. That's what you get labeled as. He took the ball to the hole nice a couple times, had a nice drive for a dunk, had a big and one finish where he growled with the crowd. Just, a big confidence game for him. I think he already has it, but like to do it in a Husker uniform setting like that's big. And then we just cannot underestimate how good Rink Mast is and can be, like, fully healthy. Like, I mean, he wasn't like on the preseason all conference stuff. And I think people overlooked him because it's easy to do with Husker basketball sometimes. I think that's going to be a mistake. He is going to be a problem in planning and playing against for opponents, just how he opens up the offense. And we saw that on display. 64% in the second half, Nebraska shot. 20 assists to 5 turnovers. They had no turnovers in the first half, even when they were behind. You'll take that every day. And now, of course, they play a big one Thursday against the Lobos. And so you gotta keep the foot on the gas, at least get 1 or 2 in Kansas City, ideally both.
Yeah, they go to Kansas City on Thursday night at the T-Mobile Center against New Mexico. And then Friday they get either
K-State
or Mississippi State.
Yep. Yeah. So
two big ones there.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are great neutral site games because they're great when you get into the quad talk, like in February, March. And so that was a big win on Saturday. It'll matter, like when we're looking at the spreadsheets in a couple months. And these games ahead will too. And you never know. Some of those could sneak into quad 1 territory.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that. We'll hear from Matt Rule later today as he previews the matchup with Penn State. Keep it locked on Husker 24/7 for all the latest.